in civil engineering. He is also certified in PMP, CCP, P30, and FIDIC contract consultant. He is also the author of 50 Planning Fundamentals and Fundamentals of Construction Contracts. Please welcome Mr. Mohammed Hijazi to the stage.
Assalamu alaikum. Looks like it's now 12 o'clock already, and past 12, and time is over, so everybody's want to go to lunch. So I try to make it quickly. inshallah. يعني we'll go to 3-4 slides and skip the others. طيب النهارده ان شاء الله هنتكلم على ال challenges in change mechanisms in contracts. الكونتراكتس بتحتاج يبقى فيها تغييرات, so we need to have change mechanism inside the contract. And while we are doing these changes, we have some challenges, so we go quickly to address these challenges. We'll go why changes occur in construction. The nature of construction contracts is different from other contracts. That's why we need these change mechanisms inside the contract. Other differences in construction, change mechanisms in the standard forms. I'll discuss only FIDIC here as we don't have time for others to go quickly. And the unilateral, bilateral procedures in the change mechanisms and the types of changes. Then the permitted in some cases and the new rate calculation. The nature of the construction contracts and the purpose of the contract, if we go to the simple form, if we go back to the basics of and the principles of the basic forms of contract, when we go to supermarket to buy something, we find the product, we see the price, we agree on the price of this product, and fully the product is developed and in front of us, we check it, and we get the product and pay the price, and that's it. With technology, we may not see the function of the project like this. If we go to the simple products, we see the function, we see the dates, we see everything, so it's very clear for us. We get the product, pay the money, and we go home. For the construction contracts, it's not like this. We don't see the product. We don't wait until the client doesn't wait until the contractor develops the project and finish everything as entire project, and then at the end, they pay the money. I got my project, thank you, we go. No, we don't do like this. So we need to have like payment mechanism inside the contract. We need to pay payments, so this is not originally in the contract. This is added inside the contract. And sometimes there are claims and disputes because of this mechanism, how to pay and what payments. Sometimes there is minimum payment to be paid or the timing of the payment and etc. The same for changes. The client doesn't see the final product. So he may change his mind, he may didn't see everything, so when he starts for the elaboration of the product, he changes his mind or he sees something he didn't address in the beginning, so I need to change this, I need to add this. So that's why we have this also inside the contract. Otherwise, if we agreed on something in the beginning, we do this and that's it. But as it takes time and the final product is not clear, so we need to have this mechanism also inside the contract to make changes, to give the client a right to make changes and how to make changes. If it is not also embedded inside the contract, the client, when he need to make a change, he need to make a new contract. We need to go a new agreement, we'll do something different. So because it's not agreed in the beginning. So this is the components of the contract. We have the time factor. As we discussed, because of this time factor, we need to have like payment mechanism, we have a change mechanism. We have also the time. If we go the simple example of supermarket, we don't have time factor, but in construction we have time factor. So we agree on a time in the beginning, then after this changes, the time may be affected. Many other things. If you can go to FIDIC, you can find like more than 15 clauses referring to the extension of time. حالات كتير بتحصل بنحتاج نمد مدة المشروع. So we add extension of time mechanism inside the contract. So all these things are added inside the contract. Some cases before adding this extension of time mechanism, for example, we don't have extension of time mechanism inside the contract, but something prevented the contractor by the employer to complete the project on time. The obligation سقط عنه الالتزام, no obligation to complete on time, and the time is at large. سقط عنه التزام الوقت الأصلي وما بقاش فيه مدة جديدة للمشروع. That's why they added the extension of time mechanisms inside the contracts. This things in changes of time and variations can be familiar of this because we are familiar with construction. But we need also to know this is not the basics of the contract. This is all of these things is added inside the contract. As also the colleagues discussed, these risks, and these are risks, and these risks to be addressed inside the contract. That's why we go also to standard forms. We go to standard forms because of the experience of tens of years of these, what are these risks and how to be added and how to have mechanisms for these risks to deal with this between the parties when these things happen. The document of this nature of construction contracts, it's very complicated because we have many documents inside the contract. We have the agreement between the parties, we have general conditions, we have particular conditions, we have risks, allocation, duties, responsibilities, payments, performance, taking over, changes, laws, procedures. We have a scope of all of this in general conditions. All of these things we have in general conditions. In particular conditions, كل عقد له طبيعة مختلفة بيبقى له particular conditions بتاعته. مش كل العقود they don't have the same price, they don't have the same scope, they don't have the specs required, time for completion, the damages. To the construction contract is a heavy contract. Many documents included inside the contract. Sometimes you have also some contradiction between these and the ambiguity inside this. And as also the colleagues discussed this collaboration between the parties. 2 days ago was another event of also commerce and contracting. They are discussing this flexibility as my colleague discussed right now, how to be flexible and how to be adaptable to adapt the changes. We are now in an era of changes every day. And I see we are as human beings, we cannot do this. We need time to deal with these changes. And I have now friends in many projects, they are still using FIDIC 1999. And now 2017 is published 8 years ago. And they are not ready to use the new version of the FIDIC. So we need time to deal with these changes. But changes now are happening faster than what we can digest. التغييرات سريعة جدا لدرجة ان احنا ما عندناش الوقت ان احنا نلحق نتعامل مع التغييرات دي. فبيتكلموا انه how to deal with these changes and how to be flexible and adaptable. And I see even after what colleagues discussed, it's still challenging. يعني now we are discussing prior the contract award, but how to be also flexible after the contract award, and how to deal with each other to go to win-win situation, not to have I want to win and the other party to lose. And it is very difficult and challenging. The priority of these documents, we need to deal which document will prevail the other document and how to deal with this. The rights of changes. As I said, in the simple form of contract, we don't have the right to change. The client doesn't have the right to change what agreed already between the parties. So that's why it's added inside the contract to have a mechanism to make these changes. And there are standard forms in FIDIC. We have variation clause, and we have other cases also discussed between by the colleagues. And we have other forms. Each form has here GCT and NC. Some forms are used in UK. Some of them are international, like FIDIC. But the most common and used in the Middle East is the FIDIC. So these are also other samples of standard forms like GCT and NAC. For example, also the definitions. So we need to be familiar with the contracts to use the definition of each contract. زي ما دكتور نبيل قال في الماركت مش كله جاهز للموضوع ده. فالناس حتى لما تيجي تستعمل العقود ما بتبقاش عارفه اللي هي هتستعمل المصطلحات بتاعه العقد نفسه. So you need to be familiar with the terms and the definitions inside each contract and use the definitions inside your contract. يعني I meet some people are using different contracts from FIDIC and they are using the terms of FIDIC. فانت ما ينفعش تستعمل مصطلحات الفيديك لو انت ما بتستعملش الفيديك، لازم تكون انت تستعمل المصطلحات في العقد اللي انت بتستخدمه. For example here GCT are using things like relevant matter for extension of time, relevant event for cost. So you are using different terms from the variation order. They are using things like relevant matter, relevant event. NEC are using potential compensation event. So extremely different term. And they have also a process and procedure how to do and to make this a change. Also in the American forms, they don't call variation, they call it a change order. And people here are PMP certified. They can be familiar in if you go to BIM book, they don't say variation order. You'll see the term of variance and defined in something else, but it's not related anyhow to the variations in contracts. You'll find what's called a change order and change mechanism. So this is American term used in American contracts, but the FIDIC and UK contracts, they don't use these terms. In changes, sometimes you have a change that the client want to make a change, so they call it directive change. المالك عايز يعمل تغيير، فهو بيغير حاجة في العقد. في حالات تانية in some other cases the change comes because of during the construction some verbal instruction or some instruction inside the site, some missing documents, some contradiction. The document makes a change. It's called constructive change. And this constructive change, it may cause claims because it's not directed by the employer. المالك مش هو اللي عمل التغيير، لا التغيير ده حصل بسبب حاجات تانية حصلت أثناء تنفيذ العقد فحصل تغيير، فده بنسميه constructive change. فده بيتحل can be solved by a claim. We have cases for changes. Engineer, the simple one is the engineer's instruction. The employer wants to change something, so the engineer makes an instruction to the contractor to make this change. Sometimes it can be a request for proposal. The employer requests a proposal from the contractor to make a change. And if this change is implemented, they pay what's the agreed cost for it. If it's not implemented, the contractor can claim for the fees for preparing this proposal. We have also contractor's proposal and value engineering, as also the colleagues discussed how it's changed from 99 to 2017. Then we go to the claims and disputes and termination, and all these things are discussed, and debt and arbitration. Here the VO procedure, if we'll go to how this procedure can work. If it's initiated by instruction by the engineer, then the contractor accepts to execute the variation, or doesn't accept if cannot be implemented of the reasons not to execute these three reasons. You can see here it's the contractor can use to reject this variation. Otherwise, the contractor submits the program, the time required, and the proposal for the cost of the variation. Then it goes to the engineer, can be agreed by the parties or not agreed. If there is no agreement, the engineer will make the fair determination. Then, if it's not of dissatisfaction between the parties of the engineer determination, they will go to DAB, and then it can be crystallized a dispute. So this how the variation work inside the contract. But also we can see as we have different forms, as we have the rep book, so we can have reference for the rates, and we have bill of quantity, and we have different reference for the rates. It can be easier sometimes to agree on the claims, but especially on the cost. Also have other thing of the time, agreement on the time. It's also another challenge. If we are yellow and design built, design معمول عن طريق المقاول، فاحنا في اليلو بوك ما عندناش بيل اوف كوانتيتي، فهنتفق ازاي على السعر، فهنبتدي ندخل في مشاكل كتير على الاتفاق على السعر. There are some determination scenarios how the parties will agree and consult, and if they agree or don't agree, how it can be a dispute and go to that. Changes can be changes also to, we have these elements already in our contracts, and we change only quantities. You're doing more quantities or inside the same contract. So we have already agreed rates. So within a limit, the employer can increase this. Otherwise, they need to agree on a new price. It can be omission of something inside the contract, and also there are limits by the FIDIC to omit something. ما ينفعش ان انا من حقي طالما ان انا حقي هحذف اي حاجه في العقد وخلاص. لا، انا لازم احذف في حدود معينه، لان ده بتاثر على it affects the entire agreement between the parties. I see the time is over. It's over already before I start. But I'll go quickly here also to one case. I have similar case in Saudi. This is a case in UK. There is a dredging contractor, and during the contract they changed the scope totally. And the contractor couldn't do the work, and after they went to the court said this change is not permitted. I have also the same case here in Saudi. كان مشروع عبارة عن concrete work, concrete and soil work, and during the contract they changed the scope totally to landscape and buildings and some water features work. So changes directly. It's not permitted to do like this. You need to, when you want to change the contract, you need to change with the same nature of the contract. جايب مقاول يعمل لك اعمال مباني وخرسانات وكده، محتاج لما تعمل تغييرات برضه مباني وخرسانات في نفس المشروع. ما تخليهوش بدل ما هو بيعمل مباني وخرسانات يعمل لك اعمال بنيه تحتيه او اعمال لاندسكيب. او ده اللي حصل في المشروع، انه خلوه يعمل حدائق ويعمل حاجات ثانيه. يقول لك we have the right to change and we have the right to change within the limit of cost, so you can do this. No, it's not permitted. So also we have some limitations to make changes. It's not as the FIDIC makes it unilateral. We'll go directly to this unilateral by one party, unilateral by the contractor. Here's the calculation of the cost. It's made unilateral by the employer can make this change, and the contractor needs to implement it. المالك من حقه منفردا بالإرادة المنفردة زي ما بيسموها في القانون المدني، بالإرادة المنفردة إن هو يعمل التغيير، ولما يعمل اوردر بالتغيير للمقاول، المقاول لازم ينفذ. وبعد التنفيذ هنتفق، الفيديك بيعمل كده، بعد التنفيذ هنتفق على السعر، واحنا بننفذ نتفق على السعر. وخلال التنفيذ الاستشاري هيحط ريت تقديري نصرف بيه واحنا شغالين لحد ما نتفق. ما اتفقناش هيبقى كليم ويروح للديسبيوت وينفذ. في نظام السعودي regulations it's not like it's different. It's not like this. The contractor doesn't start doing the work unless they agree the cost first. نتفق على التكاليف الاول وبعدين نبتدي ننفذ. ده في النظام السعودي منافسات المشتريات. بس بيديله ليميتس برضه في ايه؟ في انه يزود نسبه قد ايه ويقلل يكسب، ومن حقه يكسب. ولما المقاول يكسب هيعمل الشغل كويس والمالك هيكسب، فيبتدي الاطراف كلها مستفيده، فنبقى احنا في وين سيتويشن، ويبقى لونج تيرم ريليشن شيب ويكمل الموضوع، بدل ما احنا مش بنضغط على المقاول اكتر فالمقاول يخسر فما يقدرش يكمل المشروع، فنبقى كل الاطراف كلها خسرت. المالك برضه ما خدش مشروعه والمقاول خسر في المشروع. This is the calculation of the rates and some cases of the calculation of the rates you can see in the presentation after that. So now we discussed what the nature of construction contract, why we have the changes in the construction contract, the mechanisms in some standard forms, unilateral and bilateral. زي ما اتكلمنا على الفيديك طريقته ايه، والنظام المنافسات المشتريات السعودي شكله عامل ازاي. التايبس اوف تشينجز انه ممكن تبدا من الامبلوير او طلب بروبوزال، او تبدا من فاليو انجينيرنج من الكونتراكتور، والبرميتد انه within the scope. وما لحقناش نناقش بقى الايه الريت كالكوليشن. ف انا خلصت كده، شكرا جزيلا.